welcome to Evo India, and we have with us today yet another all-new KTM. Now this is the third bike on the new 399cc LC4C engine platform, but this time around it's a proper hardcore off-roader. Say hello to the all-new KTM 390 Enduro R. Now in this first ride review, I'm going to be telling you what this bike is, who it is for, how it differs from the 390 Adventure, and whether or not you should consider getting one. But before I proceed, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this content, share it with like-minded enthusiasts, and smash that bell icon to stay notified for all of our video drops. Let's kick things off with the design of this motorcycle. Now, as you can very clearly see, this has a proper enduro stance, and KTM touts this as the younger sibling of the very coveted 690 Enduro R, and it really has all the design cues to prove just that. You have this nice tall front fender, this nice single piece headlight lifted straight off that, but this is an LED unit with this nice plastic cowl around it. Then you have these tank shrouds that come all the way to the front, adding to that aggressive, sharp stance. You have a nice and wide handlebar. Now KTM tells us that this handlebar is slightly narrower because of the bends, and it has also been tilted forward and is a little taller than before. In the risers are a little taller to enable a better stand-up off-roading stance. You have this new 4.2-inch screen. Now this is the first time we're seeing this screen in person. Now coming behind, you have a smaller 9-liter fuel tank to go with the enduro stance to make the bike that much narrower and easier for you to ride, and that comfortably swoops in to this nice long single-piece seat, a bench style seat. It's pretty stiff. Comfort is really not the factor over here. It's more for performance and more for enabling you to ride faster and harder off-road. And similar to the new 390 Adventure, you have the same body panels with the graphics in mold. So KTM tells us that even if you drop the bike and it scratches completely, the graphics aren't going to peel away because they are actually inside the plastic. And there have been a lot of complaints about these plastic panels discoloring as well, but if you use some cleaning agent, it should rub right off. Now coming further behind, you have a nice long tail section, very similar to that of the 390 Adventure. Honestly, if you look at the bike from here to here, it does look very similar to the 390 Adventure. But the eagle-eyed among you would have noticed that this has a bigger 18-inch wheel instead of a 17-inch wheel as found on the 390 Adventure. And it's also running a slightly wider tire, and the tire in itself is a much more off-road focused Mitas tire. Now the rear section, like I said, very similar to the 390 Adventure, the same tail light and the works, same grab rail as well. Now the grab rail is something that has been put for India. Well, this bike doesn't have it, but when you do buy the bike, it will come with a sari guard as well, courtesy of Indian regulations, but I'm pretty sure that will come off quite quickly. In terms of the styling, this is a very minimalist, very bare bones motorcycle, and it looks really stunning in my opinion. And the fact that it retains the core visual DNA of the bigger 690 Enduro R, I feel that's just great. Coming to the heart of the matter, this is the same LC4C 399.03 engine as it's written over here from the KTM 390 Duke and then the 390 Adventure. It's in the same state of tune as well. The ride-by-wire calibration and all is fairly similar. But what is different on this engine, and especially the drivetrain from the 390 Adventure, is the sprocketing. It retains the 14-tooth front sprocket, but at the rear, to give back a little snappiness and to make it more capable off-road, it has a larger 48-tooth front sprocket. That's 2 teeth more than the sprocket on the 390 Adventure. In terms of the power figures, they're the same as before: 45.3 bhp at 8500 rpm and 39 Nm of torque at 6500 rpm. Now in terms of riding this motorcycle, yes, the engine is familiar, but it feels a lot more KTM-like than the 390 Adventure because of those 2 extra teeth in the rear sprocket. It feels a lot more snappy, it feels a lot more aggressive and angry, and honestly, if you have the skill to tame it, it's a whole lot of fun because the front wheel just wants to keep coming off the ground. You get on the gas really aggressively in the first to second gear, the front wheel will tend to lift. It goes really light and nice. If you want to, you can clutch pop it, carry a wheelie, and do all of that. Now that again depends a lot on your riding skill. I don't possess that level of riding skill, but the fact that this is friendly as well with the way the throttle calibration is tuned makes it very accessible. Now you have 2 different ride modes. You have street and you have off-road. Now street of course gives you access to the full power, but it's a much softer map, so it's more easily manageable. So if you so choose to, you can keep it in street and configure the ABS the way you want to ride off-road, including the traction control. And then you have off-road mode, which allows you full power and also the most aggressive throttle input. And honestly, that's the best mode to ride it in, because it reminds you that it is a KTM. That is something that the 390 Adventure lacked, in the way that it was very soft and very easy in the way it delivered its power. Not saying that that's slow, because that was also a very fast motorcycle, but this, it just feels that much more snappy, that much more of a hooligan than the 390 Adventure. And I feel this engine with the bigger sprocket, it really suits the character of this motorcycle, and it goes very well with the intent of this machine. Now, during the briefing, we asked KTM why not have a smaller engine on the Enduro, considering it's going to be an off-road machine, right? But KTM's response to that was the work that has gone into this engine to make it that much more friendly in the low end and the mid-range is something that the 200 and the 250 just wouldn't accomplish. And if you really wanted the power to get over obstacles even at a slower speed, you'd have to rev the bike out, which means you'll have to open the throttle much more than you'd be accustomed to as a beginner. So contrary to what you might otherwise assume, KTM feels that having a bigger, more powerful engine with a much better low and mid-range torque delivery and power delivery is better for the beginner than a smaller engine with less power, having you to rev it out all the way. And to an extent, I do agree with that. And honestly, a bike of this sort is something someone coming from an X-Pulse would be considering, or someone who's already friendly and familiar with the world of off-roading would choose. So I feel this engine is a great match for this entire chassis setup. Let's talk about the chassis of this motorcycle, because that's where the brunt of the changes from the 390 Adventure to this are focused. Starting with the frame and the subframe, now that is amongst the few things that hasn't gotten a lot of changes. In fact, this gets the same mainframe and the subframe as the 390 Adventure, but that's about where the similarities end. Now you swing a leg over and you're greeted by an 860mm seat height. We'll get to why in just a minute, but as you can see, I'm 5'10" and I'm very flat-footing on both sides. Yes, I'm on the heavier side, but just because of how narrow the motorcycle is, I don't think shorter riders will really struggle with the fact that it's an 860mm seat height. It's really not what the spec sheet suggests it is. Now, coming to why it is an 860mm seat height, it's down to the suspension. Now, those of you who remember the spec of the International 390 Enduro R, that gets 230mm of suspension at both ends in terms of travel, but this gets 200 at the front and 205mm at the rear. Now that is a 30mm difference, and that's why you have a 860mm seat height, whereas the international model gets an 890mm seat height. Now that means that Bajaj has taken this call to make it a little more palatable to the Indian market. Now I did ask them why they have done that, considering this is going to be an enthusiast-focused motorcycle. The sort of buyer buying this bike knows what they're getting into, and they want that sort of an off-road machine with that amount of suspension travel, and they're fine to deal with the taller 890mm seat height. But Bajaj's response was that this is based on a lot of customer research that they have done, and that is what prompted them to actually get a smaller travel suspension setup with a smaller seat height. But Bajaj also tells us that if there is enough demand, they will consider homologating the original 230mm suspension, which will also in turn raise the seat height of the motorcycle. But one thing that Bajaj made abundantly clear was that the suspension setup and the tune is not the same as that on the Adventure. It's been tuned to go with the character of this motorcycle. It's a little more supportive in the way it handles the off-road stuff, and a lot rougher stuff in that regard, and I do agree with that. And to be very honest, I don't think I'm the right person to be complaining about suspension travel, because to really feel the need for that much more travel, you really need to have the right skill to exploit the whole potential of this motorcycle. Even as it is, I don't think I was even scratching the surface of the potential of this motorcycle. It handles really well. Now coming back to the changes, you have a handlebar. It is similar to the 390 Adventure, but KTM tells us that it's a little narrower because the bends are a little different, and the team has also moved the handlebar forward a little, and it has taller risers, which means it will enable a better stand-up riding position. And if I were to stand up and show you just that, you can see it's a very natural position. I don't immediately feel the need for handlebar risers, because what you actually want to do is get into a more committed, aggressive riding stance, and this enables just that. If you're exceptionally tall, then maybe you will need handlebar risers, but Bajaj also tells us that there are 3 settings that you can use to move the handlebar further away or closer to you, and then you can always install a set of handlebar risers and get it even taller if you want. Like I said, the suspension tune is very different, and in the little time that I spent off-road, I didn't really mess around with the suspension settings as such. I didn't do hard jumps or big jumps. I did do a few, but this is in the mean setting. So this has 30 clicks of compression and rebound at the front, 20 clicks of rebound at the rear, and 10 steps of preload as well. Everything is set at the middle position, so 15, 15 and 10 with preload set to stock. That honestly for my weight worked really well, and the only time I really felt anything touch at the bottom was when I was bringing my camera person to the spot we were shooting at. I was going really slow and I was on the brakes over a mount. That's the only time it touched. Everywhere else, and I'm talking about like proper sharp steep rocks and all of that, I really didn't feel any issues. One thing is when you land big jumps, you see that the bike bottoms out, but that again I feel is a matter of skill, because if you open the gas on time as you land, suspension opens back up and you get a lot of the travel back. Speaking of travel, this has a taller ground clearance because the whole bike has been raised as against the 390 Adventure. So this has a 253 mm ground clearance versus 237 mm on the 390 Adventure. So that again enables for a little more peace of mind when you're going off-road. And like I said, I never really bottomed the bike out even once, and I'm a properly heavy rider, so that is really saying something. A lot of the pro riders we had over here again didn't really find any problem with the suspension travel. So yes, I do agree that the consumers will feel a little shortchanged with the fact that we don't get the long travel suspension, but I really feel you should try the motorcycle before you really make a decision about getting it or not getting it just because of the 30 millimeters of travel. Because honestly, this will require a lot of skill from you to reach the end of the potential of the motorcycle, which most riders don't really possess unless they're proper enthusiasts. And those who are proper enthusiasts will obviously get aftermarket suspension anyways. So I feel to that end, don't knock it before you try it. The spec sheet suggests something, but you need to really experience it to understand what I'm talking about. And I feel like this is a really great package for off-roading. Now, in terms of weight, this has a dry weight of 170 kilos and a wet weight of 177 kilos. That's with this 9-litre tank brimmed. Now, this is a 9-litre tank, not a 14.5-litre tank like the Adventure, because again, it's an enduro bike. You need that slim profile to really move all the way front and back. And this seat supports that very, very well. Now, this is not something you're going to be touring with because, of course, smaller tank, much larger sprocket, which means your cruising speeds at the same RPM versus an Adventure will change drastically. But for all intents and purposes, it's great because this is a road legal motorcycle. You have mirrors, you have a number plate, you have a headlight. All of that is there. So you don't really need a pickup truck to get to your off-road location. You can ride to your off-road location, ride as hard as you want off-road and come back all in a day's work. Now, the other changes from the 390 Adventure to the Enduro R include the wheels. Now, as you can see, this continues to get a 21-inch front wheel, but the rear wheel is an inch bigger at 18 inches, and it's also a little wider with a 140 section instead of 130 section. Now, this also misses out on the tubeless spoked wheels, which KTM tells us is a wise choice for a purely off-road motorcycle, because in the event of a hard landing or in the event of you knocking your wheel into a stone and you're deforming the rim, if it was a tubeless tire, you'd lose air pressure and there'd be no means for you to fill that up again until you fix the rim. But in this case, because it has a tube inside, it will still retain pressure and you can still ride back, which I feel is a lot more important. So yes, dealing with a tube with a puncture will be a little more challenging, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, I feel like it's a wise choice to have a tubed setup instead of a tubeless setup. The other change is the braking. Now, this has a 285 mm disc at the front with a twin piston axially mounted caliper, but the brake pads are sintered in the front. At the rear, you have a 240 mm disc with a single piston caliper, but this is an organic pad. Now, braking performance is very linear, it's very easy to modulate, and it's just the right amount of sharp for the kind of off-roading that we were doing. And I feel it's just sharp enough for getting on the road and riding as well. Now, this is something I won't tell you with full confidence right now because I haven't ridden it on the road. I will tell you that when I ride it on the road, but the initial impressions suggest that this will be a very competent braking package on the road as well. Now, in terms of riding off-road, I feel like this chassis setup comes together really well. Yes, at 177 kilos, it is a little heavy. It's a little heavier than the Duke, in fact, too. but the power more than compensates for everything. It's a great experience riding off-road. You really don't need to be an advanced rider to get on this and have a lot of fun, but the really advanced riders were also having a lot of fun, and I feel like that's saying something. Coming to the features of this motorcycle, now at the center of it is a new 4.2-inch TFT screen. Now this is a much narrower, smaller layout. It's very minimal in the way it looks and operates. Apart from the standard layout, you also have a minimal layout which shows you just what you need to see when you're riding off-road in big numbers. So you don't really need to look at the screen for too long, so that's great. Apart from that, in terms of connectivity, you still get turn-by-turn navigation, you get phone pairing and all of that. So it's not like just because you're getting a smaller screen, you're not getting all the features. Now, of course, this doesn't get the cruise control and all of that because, again, not meant to be a highway motorcycle. And one very nice thing is the way you interact with the screen. You have a nice small joystick over here. 4 directions, nothing else, no middle directions. It's very tactile, very chunky, easy to use with the gloves as well, and you have a dedicated ABS off button. Now, like the 390 Adventure, this also has ABS mode, so you have ABS on both. You have an off-road ABS mode which disables ABS at the rear, and long pressing this button for 3 seconds and releasing it switches off ABS altogether, including the front wheel. Now this is something I recommend you do only if you have the skill for it, but the fact that it allows you to do it just shows the intention that KTM has with this motorcycle to be a proper committed off-roader, giving full control to the rider. So all in all, I feel like the electronics package is just right. It has traction control as well. Everything can be switched on and off. You can choose the throttle maps with street and off-road, and I feel like on the whole, it's a very competent package. It gives you everything you need to get going. Nothing more, nothing less, just right. Now, as of shooting this review, I don't know what the price of this motorcycle is, but what I do know is that it will be more affordable than the 390 Adventure. Does it make sense for you to get this motorcycle? Well, you need to know exactly what you need from the motorcycle, because this is a very focused, very singular-minded motorcycle, and it expects the same level of commitment to the purpose from the rider as well. So if hardcore riding is something you really want to do, then I feel like this is a great place to go. This is a very good product for someone to upgrade from an X-Pulse to as well, because that it doesn't really have anything you can go to from. This, I feel, to an extent is a good choice for someone upgrading from the X-Pulse 200. You get great kit, you get Mitas tires, that is just great off-road tires, and all in all, I feel like this is a very rounded package when it comes to a proper dedicated off-roader. The fact that it's road legal means you can take it to the trail on the bike itself. You don't need to load it or anything, and you can ride the trail and come back on your bike. So that, I feel, is great. Now, as far as the suspension travel issue is concerned, I understand that many riders will feel shortchanged by this, but I really feel it's a matter of skill. So take a test ride, see if it works for you. If not, you can always make a case to KTM, and they did promise us that if there is enough demand, they will get the longer travel suspension, and the suspension is retrofittable. All the housing, all the componentry has been made accounting for the fact that maybe that can be added on later, so there won't be any problems with the fitment as well. So that, I really feel, is something that you need to explore after riding the motorcycle. I don't think you should judge it just based on that 30 mm travel deficit. I feel it's a great motorcycle. It's fit for the purpose. It requires a lot of skill from you to enjoy, but if you don't have the skill, you can still learn, and I feel that's exactly what this sort of motorcycle should be. So I feel KTM have done a great job with this motorcycle. By the time you watch this video, the prices will be out. We will update the description. We will add it in the pinned comment so you can see what the prices are. But all in all, I feel like this bike gets a thumbs up from me. What do you think about it? Do you really think the suspension travel is an issue? Do you think you're feeling shortchanged? Let us know in the comment section down below. Let's have a conversation. But that's been it for this video, and as always, thank you for watching.